The Challenger hoax. Why the deception? In this video, I will elaborate on the most plausible reason for the cover-up, and I will also answer some of the most frequent questions I see in the comments in response to part 1. I'll start with Challenger astronaut Judy Resnick. I often get these comments claiming that her eyes don't match. So, let's just remove her eye makeup. Well, look what we have here. It's the same woman. And no, this image was not photoshopped or AI generated. It was screenshotted from this C-SPAN video. Feel free to look it up for yourself. Another question I see frequently is, where is teacher Christa McAuliffe? Some believe that Christa McAuliffe is now a Syracuse law professor named Sharon McAuliffe, and although they do slightly resemble each other, their facial features don't match up. In addition to having a different eye color, Sharon's facial features are much wider than Christa's. So for now, the whereabouts of Christa McAuliffe and fellow crew member Gregory Jarvis remain officially unknown. Now, to address the most frequent question I see, why didn't the Challenger crew board the shuttle? And the answer is complicated. The 1986 mission was the Challenger shuttle's 25th launch. Challenger was built in 1979 and was designed to be a test vehicle for the space program. It was not intended for long-term use, and plans to build the final vessel were repeatedly pushed back due to budget cuts. At the time, NASA held the lead position in the ongoing competition between countries to be the forefront of space exploration. The continuous denial of funding was perceived by NASA to be an ominous sign. They knew they had to do something, possibly out of fear of becoming obsolete, as public interest in NASA was steadily waning. So they came up with a clever plan that would garner enough sympathy from the public to get the funding that they needed without any loss of life. I don't believe that the 7 crew members were aware of NASA's plan until the day before launch. They were told that they would not be boarding the shuttle. It seems more plausible that the crew were unwittingly forced to comply with a cover-up rather than doing so by choice. NASA ensured the crew that they and their families would be protected and of course rewarded with a hefty financial compensation. After some minor cosmetic alterations to their appearances, the FBI's witness protection program was able to create trails of phony credentials to secure them prominent careers. To address the next question, why wouldn't they change their names? And how could they live out their lives undetected? For 6 of the crew members, this was easy to do because they were not household names. As I stated before, public interest in the space program was very low. I was alive back then, and the only one I knew of was teacher Christa McAuliffe. I had no idea who the other astronauts were. There was no internet back then, so the flow and reach of information was severely limited. For Christa McAuliffe, on the other hand, this transition would have been a lot more difficult because she was the only one who held celebrity status. She would have had no other choice but to go into permanent lay-low hiding, which carries the risk of depression and paranoia. As highlighted in the National Geographic documentary, after the explosion, NASA was awarded billions of dollars in new funding, which resurrected the space program as was intended, and public interest in NASA subsequently skyrocketed. NASA achieved their selfish goal with callous disregard for the trauma they inflicted upon an entire generation of the nation's children. It is my firm belief that NASA's intentions were not nefarious per se, but rather indifferent to that effect. It is unreasonable to expect NASA or the crew members to admit culpability in such an elaborate deception, because can you imagine the backlash? Now you understand the importance of keeping this truth buried forever, and why the layers of lies are vehemently defended and perpetually instilled into the public's perception. As a result, much of the public has become feeble-minded. Their veil of delusion is so thick they will never be able to see the truth, even if it's stripped bare naked, put on a silver platter, and shoved under their noses.